This is TWIP. Hey folks, a little something interesting or different today for the This Week in Photo discussion. I'm on with my friend Chris Fenwick. If you have anything to do with Final Cut Pro, you know this guy. He's one of those people that knows Final Cut Pro and editing in general from the inside out, backwards and forwards and all that. And he's, we'll get into that. But Chris reached out to me a couple of, about a week or so ago, and he posed a really interesting question. He said, how do you color balance for darker skin tones? He was having problems with that, and this was on the heels of the whole Simone Biles controversy with Annie Leibovitz, and all that back and forth of they should have hired a black photographer to shoot her, or should the photographers that shot her know her, or Annie's people, should they have known how to process and color correct for black skin? So anyway, we decided to jump on and have this conversation and just talk like, two people that like this stuff and see if there's, a solution, or maybe there is no solution. But Chris Fenwick he's a lead editor at Slice Editorial. And I'll put the links to all of his stuff in the show notes and the description for this episode on YouTube. But follow him over there. But check out this discussion. It's pretty interesting, or it will be pretty interesting from the standpoint of just what's what in the real world of color correcting for other humans. All right, here we go. Starting now. All right, Chris Fenwick, welcome to This Week in Photo, man. How you doing?
Hello, Mr. Johnson. I'm doing well. How you doing?
It's good. Yeah, I'm doing really good. You know what? We were talking before we started recording, and I got a page of notes just from chatting just before we started recording. Yeah. What are you doing with your hands off camera? No, but always, you're a wealth of information and you're humble about it, obviously, which is why you get invited to speak at conferences and all this other stuff. And you probably have more work than you can deal with. But, I want to segue into that stuff that I talked about in the tease, the color balancing for darker skin tones, black people, brown people, etc. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about Chris Fenwick and Slice Editorial. What do you do in the world, and how are you helping it keep spinning?
I don't think I help it keep spinning at all, but
you just drag.
No, that's frightening. No, I'm an editor, and I tell people this all the time, and they say, "Ooh, fascinating. What do you edit?" I go, "I edit a bunch of stuff you'd never want to watch." It's not that exciting. In the corporate communications and corporate branding space, there is tons of work to do. Most people realize that. Whether it's, photography or video or editorial like I do. But frankly, most of the stuff I work on, you'd never want to watch. It's not that exciting. As a matter of fact, I think the people that I make it for, they're struggling to get their employees to watch it, But the bottom line is it's a living. And I've always said that to satisfy your own creative, thing that you have to do, you're better off. I mean, it's good that I don't rely on my job to do that. And I'll tell you that if you try to be, to exude your best, Steven Spielberg or George Lucas when you're doing my job, you're going to be a pain, because you're going to have all these great ideas. I'm not saying they're not good ideas, but they're not right for the project that you're working on. And so you're always better off serving the project. And most of the stuff that I do, it's a head and he's talking, and there might be a graphic over his shoulder that, explains what he's talking about. Yeah. But I don't need 7 different angles and, tight close-ups and tension. No, I don't need that. And so if you want to do that, you should totally do that. But do it on something that you're producing and not that you're trying to get paid for. And it's just kind of a pet peeve of mine. You keep your creative thing to where it's being asked for. And I just churn stuff out. That's what we do. It's not really exciting, but like I said, corporate. Pays the bills.
Corporate video pays the bills. Keeps the earth spinning. That keeps the earth spinning right there. That's
absolutely. And I'll tell you, 4 days after Governor Newsom shut down the state of California, where we're based, we were in production. And we were in production because I kind of reminded everybody that we work with, especially in the office, that our core competency is to help people disseminate information. That's what we do. We help people communicate. And even during a pandemic, people have to communicate. And so we came up with some workflow ways to do that. And I've talked about that on other shows, and I'm happy to talk about it here, but it's not what we really came to talk about. But I was working on Tuesday, and I delivered my first client video before the week was up, So
wow.
We're just disseminating information.
And I want to talk about just how the lockdown and the increased emphasis on distance learning and distance work and all this stuff is affecting people like you, like sit in an edit bay and do stuff. Like I want to.
It doesn't affect an editor at all. Not one bit.
Right, you're already a veal
I'm very
in a
used
veal
to working
box, right?
by myself in a dark room. Yes, it's fine. As a matter of fact, there was a meme that came out in the first week, and it was like editor pre-COVID, editor after COVID. Same dude sitting at the same computer.
Same dude, probably the same dude, but with more annoyances of people coming
over his shoulder. Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears, and I want to get into that stuff of what the world looks like pre and post for someone like you that's doing high end and corporate editing and professional level in the editing bay type stuff. But on the topic of skin tone, how has that affected you over the years in terms of trying to balance for that? I'm sure you've had thousands of different shades of people come through your computer. Like,
it's super interesting.
What does it look like?
It's super interesting. This first really became an issue to me about, I'm going to say it was 6 or 8 years ago. And I was working on a piece that was, it was multiple interviews with a bunch of software programmers. And in this, and by the way, can we just say, I'm white, you're black, they're Indian. I don't want to chase a bunch of special words or I don't know what the proper words are anymore. I'm old enough that I've used them all. But so I was doing this piece, and all these guys were Indian programmers, okay? And I don't know why, they just happened to have very long names that I couldn't pronounce. And so I cut the piece, and we're at the color stage. So I go to and the way I would typically work is I'll go to the first instance of the first guy, and I diddle and fiddle and push and pull and three-way color corrector. It's like, okay, yeah, that looks good. Then you go to the next guy, and you diddle and fiddle and you push and pull and three-way color corrector. And okay, yeah, he looks good. And then you do the same thing with the third guy, and then you start comparing them, and you're like, okay. And then I apply the color correction to every clip of guy one and every clip of guy two and every clip of guy three. And I go back and I start watching the piece, and it's awful. It looked horrible. And I almost wanted to throw.
Horrible in what way? What was the horror?
They didn't look human anymore.
Okay.
It didn't look right. And ultimately that's what we want to do, is we want to make something look aesthetically pleasing, but also not draw attention to itself.
So what was that? I mean, was it the horror? I mean, why was it so off? And would you have had the same experience with white people or lighter skin?
So that's the real question, Frederick. So I realized, and that day I pulled all the color correction off the piece, and I did it again. I started from scratch, and I got to the end, and I still didn't like it. And then I'm Googling how to color correct Indian skin tones, and I didn't find anything. And I was like, what is wrong? What is the problem? And what I came up with, the best I could come up with, was that somewhere in my own personal psyche, this white boy from Chicago was just trying to make everybody look like him.
Yeah.
And I wasn't consciously doing it. And frankly, that realization really didn't come to me for years. But I struggled with it. And I didn't literally say, why does this man not look Caucasian? It wasn't like that.
Right. Yeah.
But there was
your brain was like, this is what skin tone. My brain is saying this is skin tone. Let's try to get it close to that. Right. Yeah. That's where it was going. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. And then soon after that, I was walking through an airport, and I'm going to have you do a little Google test here. Do you have enough screen real estate that you can open up a couple of Google windows while we're doing this?
I cannot. I don't have that. I don't have that level of technology.
Okay, well you're gonna have to just bear with me and just use your imagination. Use your imaginary head. So I was walking through an airport.
Actually, I could bring up a screen. Give me a URL. I'll bring it up.
It's called Google. Google.
Okay. Well, give me a search term. Smart ass.
Search for 50 Cent vibe. And then click on the little image tab and just look at all the different photos.
Okay.
So I'm walking through an airport and I go by a newsstand and this image on the cover of Vibe magazine. Now it's one where he's wearing a baseball cap and I noticed it out of the corner of my eye and it was striking. It was like really, we used the term earlier, it was emotional. And I walked over and I picked it up and I was like, why do I like this image? Now don't necessarily try and find that image. I just want you to look at all the different images of 50 Cent when you search for 50 Cent vibe. And this image, it was striking. Now, one of the things they did, okay, it's the number 2 image there. So the number 2, now one of the things they did is, they overly whitened his eyes. And, he's trying to look like a tough guy and, whatever. Yep. But look at his skin tone. It has this kind of, I'll call it a plus blue feel to it. Okay? Do you see it in the blacks?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
You see what I mean? Now, if you go back, and I think that's part of what I found really striking. So if you go back to the page that had a bunch of images, go back a couple of pages, and you look at all of the different images that pop up right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In my estimation, again, white boy from Chicago, I see a lot of different colors. Mm-hmm. The one over on the side, XX, where it says Curtis, he looks a little more yellow there. The initial one, it's definitely plus blue in the blacks. The upper right corner of the main field, he's a little bit more orange. Mm-hmm. I mean, the color temperatures are all over the place. Right. Now, some of that is art direction. I get it. Maybe it's the people working on it. I don't know. I don't know 100%. Okay, leave that tab open. Make a new tab. And I want you to search for a different person.
Okay.
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Uh-oh.
The whitest of all people ever. Pfeiffer. There's a P in Pfeiffer.
L-E-P. How do you spell her last name?
P-F. If it doesn't autofill, your computer's broken. P-F-I.
I don't know how to spell Pfeiffer.
There's really, it won't autofill something?
No. Look at that.
Oh, man.
Well, let's see if I spell it wrong. Will Google fix me? There we go.
Okay. No, not Wikipedia. Go to, click on the image tab. Up toward the top. Bingo.
Yep.
In my estimation, and maybe it's just this white boy from Chicago, most of those pictures look about the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, and that's the thing with skin tone, right?
I don't know if that means that most people that put images on the internet identify with Michelle Pfeiffer, or maybe they're white. I don't know. But I think part of it is an unregistered and meaning almost subliminal racial bias. I also think that some of it might be technology, and I'd love to get your opinion on it. Have you ever noticed?
I agree, and some things came to mind while you were talking about that. I think there's multiple layers here, right? Because one layer is it's completely subjective, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's color correction and it's completely subjective from a brain standpoint, also from a biology standpoint. We all have different numbers of rods and cones in our eyes, so we see and perceive color differently. Your red is not my red, and we will never know what your red is, and you'll never know what my red is, right? Unless we can figure out how to swap eyes for some reason. So there's that. And then there's the technological side of it, I think, where it's computers, right? All computers are rendering colors differently and the displays are different. You don't know if they're on a phone or a tablet or on a TV screen. Colors are all over the place. And then also, back to the biology piece of it, there's an infinite number, literally, I would argue, an infinite number of gradations between the darkest black person and the lightest skinned black person, or the Irish zero melanin person, all the way through to the tan Italian that could
Right.
pass for black, right? So,
Yeah, Sicilian.
and how do you,
Sure.
yeah, the Sicilian, how do you as the editor pick one? Right?
Right.
With all those variables out there, how do you pick? It's impossible.
And
It's
I honestly
impossible to
think
pick
that
one.
some of it is an unregistered, and maybe maybe it's just a racist pick, whatever. But I think most of the time it's like this unregistered racial bias, and I think that was part of my problem with these Indian guys. Like, I think somewhere inside I was just trying to make them look more like me. And they
You're
should
like, you
not
look better
have.
if you were a little lighter. How do I make you a little lighter? It's like,
Right.
something's still wrong. How do I get you more light? Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, and that's a bias, right? Even if it's subconscious,
there's
I know
another
you,
thing.
and I know where your brain is, and it's not there, right? So I'm like, your brain is trying to like figure out what looks good for the client. That's what your job is at the end of the day. How do I make the best work I can for this client, and how do I make these people look their best? That's where your brain is going. But you don't have a I don't correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have a grounding, or anybody has a grounding in what the correct, if there is a correct skin tone for anybody. And
Okay,
my skin
very
tone
interesting.
changes daily, Chris. Like if I go outside and spend some time in the sun, I'm gonna come back in a shade darker than I am right now. It's just like you would.
Right. I was super sunburned over the weekend. So there is something to this. Are you familiar? You know what a video waveform monitor looks like. You know what a
Yeah.
histogram looks like, of course.
Absolutely.
You know what
yeah.
the parade scopes, and I know you're familiar with a vector scope.
Yeah.
Are you familiar
I
with
know what these things are. I don't know how to use them.
do you okay, that's a whole nother episode. On a vector scope, going from the center of the vector up to about 10 o'clock, there will be, and it's there in Photoshop or Final Cut. If you open it up, you'll see a line, and that line is called the flesh tone line. And I am told by people much smarter than me that regardless of race, all flesh tone roughly lands on that line.
Okay.
So you just said, there's no technical reason. Well, there kind of is. I mean, and
Who made
sometimes
that
I do
line
that.
though? Like that's you gotta
Probably a
rewind.
white
Like,
guy from
who
Chicago.
came up with that line? It's like the founding fathers came up with that line, right?
Maybe that's been my
These are
problem
the
all
acceptable
along.
flesh tones,
It's those guys
Yeah,
up
but
on
we
Mount
don't know.
Rushmore. They invented the flesh tone line in a vector scope.
Exactly. It reminds me of like what are those really expensive headset microphones?
Oh,
that,
there's
you
a
know,
bunch
they use
of
a TED.
DPAs.
No, the
Countryman?
other ones. Countryman. Yeah, I remember a couple years ago I was going to buy a Countryman microphone, and I'm looking on their site. You can buy them in skin tones. Right?
Why you got this pink thing on your face, boy?
Right, no, but they had one. They had skin. I think they've changed it since, but they had one that was called Skin Tone, and then they had one. The darker one was called Mocha. So you could get actual skin tone
Who
or
picked that
mocha.
word? Who picked that word? Was it a white guy or a black guy?
I was like, I guess a mocha. It's the same people that created Band-Aids, probably. So
These are problems I haven't had. I will admit. The Band-Aids were
Exactly.
kind of made for my people. No,
exactly. I'm like, why is this Band-Aid so contrasty? I have no
So
idea.
let me ask you: Is there anything that you do when you're processing photos,
Yeah.
when you're looking at flesh tones? Is there anything that you do that you find yourself shaping the way somebody looks? Would you?
No,
Let me put it this way.
not.
Would you have gone as plus blue on that 50 Cent photo? Because I got to say, to this day, I still think that's a striking photo.
Yeah. On that pick, I think. Well, Chris, you got to also. It's not all about accuracy. Let's be honest, right? At a certain point, the photographer is taking creative license and he's trying to evoke a mood. And in the case of 50 Cent here, look at his face, right? He's trying to be tough and hard and unapproachable in that shot. And he's doing it really well.
Beautiful white eyes.
But yeah, he's very healthy. He drinks lots of water, but he's pissed off, right? Half of it is you're not going for. Look at all these shots on this. This is the photographer or the whoever's putting these pieces together. This is them saying, "I'm going for a mood." Like this one in the upper right here. I want it looking like Los Angeles on a very polluted day. It's that kind of look. Or you make those decisions. Back to your question about me and how I make these kinds of decisions if I'm working on somebody. It's 90% of the time, 100%, it's going to be subjective, right? And I'm not trying to say, okay, this person's skin tone on the day that I shot them looked like this, and this is the perfect tone for them. If I need that level of accuracy, I'll put a Greytag Macbeth color chart in there, and then I can start there at least, and then take creative license from there. But for the most part, I'm eyeballing it, man. It's like, and I don't think these, like we were talking about before we started recording, like with the Simone Biles thing, I don't know that the argument against Annie Leibovitz or her post-production team, let's say it wasn't Annie. Annie pulled the trigger, post-production team did the editing. I don't know that we would have been having this discussion if the pictures of Simone Biles came out fantastic and nobody had any complaints. There would have been no, hey, this is racist and you should have hired a black photographer to do that. I don't know that the discussion would have went there if the photos looked fantastic. I think people had a problem with the photos and then rewinded back and said, well, who shot the photos? Oh, well, you should have had somebody black do it, right? I think at the end of the day, not speaking for Simone Biles, if I was an Olympic athlete, I would want the best freaking picture of me possible to go on the cover of Vogue. And how do you do that? Annie Leibovitz is available. I want Annie to shoot my stuff, right? So I don't know. I think it's a zeitgeist of where the country is, or the world, or more specifically the country is right now, and it's driving that level of nitpicking conversation. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, were the pictures, so if you do the search, Annie Leibovitz, Simone Biles, there's the cover with her giant back. And then there's also one where she's like flying through the air. There's one where she's kicking above the word Vogue. Was there one or two pictures in particular, or was it the entire the entire shoot that people had issue with?
I didn't read all the stories about which ones people had issues with, but I think it was ones like, this shot right here, right?
Yeah.
She just looks horrible, right? And she's a very pretty girl. She has good skin. Look at her over here. She looks great. And this shot, when you look at it, she looks like she just got up, right? It looks like there was no stylist. Her suit is going up her ass over here. They could have pulled that down. It doesn't look like there was a lot of thought. I don't know. I'm not Annie Leibovitz. Yeah, I think
the one that bothers me the most is the one where she's flying through the air in like a dancer's pose. It just looks super dark and and again, that's like, yes, Chris, white man, she is a black woman in front of a gray wall.
I don't think so. I think this one is clearly somebody made decisions on what they were going to do with this shot, right? So this is, let's do this outdoor shot. Let's skew it towards cyan. We have supercomputers at our disposal, right? So they could have brought the shadows up. They could have done anything they wanted to do this shot. They chose to do it like this. So so I have to call artistic license. I have to call that they meant to do this. I don't think this was an accident, whether it was right or wrong. This was intentional. And when I say it's intentional, I don't think it was intentionally biased or racist. So let's make Simone Biles look like shit. I think it was more, let's try something different. Let's make her look like this. Let's make it look kind of mysterious or whatever. And they failed, for the most part.
Do you think the story was completely exacerbated by all the political stuff going on?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, I don't think this story. Well, if the images had been fantastic and beyond reproach, then we would have just been continuing to celebrate Simone Biles. But unfortunately, they
And
came
Annie
out like
Leibovitz.
this. And Annie Leibovitz, yeah, yeah. But, you know, the shoot was about Simone. So I think, you know, they would have been like, wow, look at all these accomplishments that Simone Biles has done, overcoming abuse and, you know, yada, yada, yada. It would have been about that. Instead, unfortunately, the conversation, because of the zeitgeist in the nation, got switched over to, you know, should have had a black photographer on this, you know, and all that. So I don't think if this shoot had happened a year ago, we would have been having this conversation about it. So but the other side of it, Chris, is we are here, right? We are here having this, you know, you don't have a time machine. So this is where we are, and this is the earth. This is the point in time when we have to deal with what is thrown at us. So it's the reality. You can't say, well, if this had been 10 years ago, then this A, B, and C wouldn't have happened. That's like saying, if I had worn a condom, she wouldn't have got pregnant, right? But you didn't, and she is. So we got to move forward with our decisions.
But like Annie's got a long history of amazing portraits. Clearly, there's a few black people she shot over the years. Mm-hmm. Did any of those get as much, scrutiny?
We should do some research on that. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah. So to a certain degree, this is, you know, when we talked about doing this interview, I said, just make sure you have my back. To a certain degree, I think that a lot of this is just ridiculously overblown. And if it had happened 10, 20 years ago or 10, 20 months from now, I think the discussion would be 100% different. I agree.
I don't think they're good photos. I don't think it's a racial coup either.
Right. Yeah.
I would be interested to see, has Annie come out and tried to justify any of these? Well, let me tell you what I was doing, what I was going for, or did she just like, whoop? She noped out and said, no, I'm going to just hide in my house here till all this crap blows over.
I haven't seen any statements or anything, but my guess would be, if it were me, I would have just, you know, it's an artist, right? That'd be like Mapplethorpe or somebody explaining their work, right? Or, you know, it's like, I did the shoot. I like my shots. You hired me. You paid me $70 million to do the shoot or whatever she got paid. You know, I did it, you know, and now it's sparking controversy. On one hand, you know, if you take a playbook out of Roger Stone's book, you know, any publicity is good publicity. So we're talking about her work.
I had never heard of Simone Biles until you pointed this out to me.
Really? Oh,
like
yeah.
You and I were talking about having this conversation, and you go, "Oh yeah, that's a great conversation, especially what's going on with Simone Biles." I'm like, "Excuse me."
You don't have a 7-year-old daughter that's in gymnastics, though, right?
No, I do not.
A 7-year-old black daughter that's in gymnastics. So Simone Biles is the Steve Jobs of gymnastics.
How dare you presume that I don't have a black daughter?
I'm guessing.
I think you're being kind of racist right now.
You might have a hidden one somewhere, Chris Fenwick. I don't know. I'm trying. So, you said I was supposed to have your back. I'm trying to keep you covered.
So moving forward, what do we do? What do you? Before we move forward, have you ever had issues? And again, this is just, I'm turning the table on you. Have you ever had issues where you had images of a white person or an Indian person or somebody who doesn't fall into the same, you know, vector as you, as your skin tones, where you had troubles making it look good?
No, and that's a really good question. I have
so then
not.
It's just me. Wonderful. Great.
No, it's not. It's not. But think of it like this. Like zoom out a little bit and think of it more from a 30,000-foot standpoint. So when, like, if you put an overlay of demographics on this stuff, I probably, well, you know, I don't know, it might be 50-50, but it's more balanced in my brain towards my own skin tone, right? Because I probably shot more, let's say photographed. I probably photographed more black people than you have. So I don't know what you do in your spare time, Chris Finley. But I probably photographed more black people than you have. But I remember going, when I was in the military and in the Air Force and learning photography, I remember the training on color correcting was biased towards Caucasian skin. And I didn't notice that it was. Like, we would get test prints to print, and most of the, in the color lab, because we're on, remember those things called enlargers? So
Yeah.
we were on enlargers, color correcting and learning how to color correct and do all this stuff. And the test prints were generally of, there a lot of them were just the picture of the cornucopia of fruit and flowers and the different colors, and you got to try to match it. It was that, but the portraits were generally white people. There was some, dark skin in there, or black people or brown people, but for the most part, it was like, okay, you gotta spend some time getting this shot right. And we didn't think it was nothing malicious. It was like, here's a stack of stuff, just go through it. And in order for you to go on to the next
Right.
level, you got to color correct these shots, and your boss has to look at them, make sure they're good, and then you can go to the next level. Boom. So,
Yeah.
maybe there was that inherent bias in my upbringing. And then the superpower for me came from also being black, right? So now I know how to color correct you, and I know what I look like, so I can do everybody, right? so...
Well, it is a little interesting. You say probably about half of the photographs you've taken are of black people. So that's skewing, 4 times the national, proportions.
Yeah.
And definitely, half of the photographs I've taken have not been black people. That was a good guess. But and maybe this whole discussion is just me seeing my own biases, But it is interesting. I will say, when I saw that 50 Cent image, like, I started, like, if I was grading a shot this shot that I'm looking at now, I would definitely grab the blacks and push them a little blue.
Right,
I'd do a little. Oh no, you have
try
controls.
that. I do. Well, let's color correct me live right now. Okay.
Oh,
so
is that a good idea?
let's.
Have you changed anything?
I'm bringing up my temperature. Can you see that? Is it changing on your side? Oh, you know what? It's not changing on your side because you're in Skype. It's changing in Ecamm. You can't see it.
Oh, okay.
So the people that are watching this saw it go really warm for a second, then I put it back. So, yeah.
But now, and you're familiar with the whole, orange teal controversy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
the
and
overused nature of it in Hollywood. Yeah.
Totally, especially if you're Michael Bay. But
Right.
yeah, but I mean, that's obviously an example where something is done for, well, I will say this look, pink face, green wall, or I can go, hold on. Hey, can I get your opinion?
Yeah, bring it.
So I got pink face, green wall, or I got, hold on, boom. Oh, nope, not what I want to be on.
Well, see, now you're just showing. Yeah, for the fools that are listening to this audio, Chris Fenwick is on screen showing off that he has colored lights behind him on the wall that he can control.
Well, no, what I want to know is, do you like the blue or the green better? Because somebody.
I think I like the blue better because of the flag back there. And it
good point.
makes you pop better. Yep.
So, but the whole point of that is the reason I did that is for the color contrast, right? And yes, you can have brightness contrast, duh. For example, I would have encouraged you to buy a chair that didn't go up to your head and wasn't black, because then your head would pop against the off-white wall back there.
I know, like this, yeah, right.
Yeah, that chair's massive, dude. What are you doing?
This is a gamer's chair. This is a gamer's chair. Come on, what are you, old? This is a gamer's chair.
Yes, I am. But like the alternative,
and this was
here,
a gift, thank you. So I have to use it. So,
so the alternative here is if I lose all the color, and this is, it's not horrible, but I like the color contrast.
Yeah. I think I like the blue glow better. It makes you pop out instantly. It's much better.
I think the comment about the flag is a good one too. It does feel a bit more patriotic.
Absolutely.
I made this 14 piece of wood. Every one of those stripes is separate.
Oh, look at that! You made that. So you have a wood. Just we're completely off topic, but you have a woodworking shop.
Yeah. It's
Is
been
it just like a
ever
hobby,
since
or are you making?
ever since I moved out to Sacramento, and I had a garage for the first time in my life at 55 years old or whatever, 54 years old. I was the night we got the keys to the house. I was standing in the garage, and I was like, "This is going to be fun." Because I'm like in junior high, I was all about wood shop, but I've lived in apartments and condos ever since. So yeah, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. So I, renewed a hobby from a long time ago.
That's
and
cool.
It's been a lot
cool.
of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, totally off topic.
No, it's totally cool. We're just shooting the breeze. I had obviously most of us or a lot of us took wood shop, right, in high school. So I did that. And I remember being bitten by the whittling bug for like 2 summers.
Really?
Because I remember seeing this. Maybe it was my grandfather or somebody. I remember them taking a piece of wood and just like sitting on the front porch and, messing with it. And then suddenly he had this figurine, I'm like, you made that with just a knife and a piece of wood? I want to do that. So, so
How
I
old
tried
were
it
you
out.
at that time?
I want to say maybe 12, like 12-ish in that range, 12, 13 probably. So, yeah, and I still love that stuff. I
That's
still
a good
love the
skill to
idea
teach
of
a boy how to
taking a
not
block
cut
of
his
wood.
finger off with a knife.
I totally did. I'd got some deep slices. I got deeper slices in my finger from cutting mats for photos. So, I slit the tip of this finger off like diagonally right there. Just didn't even know. I'm like, what's all this red stuff on my mat?
Oh my God. You're
It didn't go to the bone. It didn't go to the bone, and it grew back. So, it wasn't that bad. But it was like 6 to 12 weeks of, remembering my error. And I never did that. I never did that again. Much more respect for mat cutting gear after that. Trust me.
Right.
So let's wrap this up, man. So where do we get to? So is it like from a technical standpoint, like we said at the beginning, you're not going to ever be 100% accurate on color, right? Because of biology, rods and cones, because of technology, every display is different. It's all subjective. So should there be a re-examining of the human color palette, and then we come up with like a standard, that's not that founding father line you talked about?
The thing for me, it's worth looking into. Look at your flesh on a vectorscope in Final Cut. I'll come over and I'll teach you how to read the
Yeah,
scripts.
please.
I think the thing for me was the realization. It was the education. I learned more, and I learned from these anecdotal events. The one editing project, which I found to be very difficult, and the striking 50 Cent photo. And I think that for me to know that is a possibility, to know that, do I need to be more objective and realize that I might be pushing something the wrong direction. I might be exerting my own racial bias on something. Just because I look at myself in the mirror every day doesn't mean everybody should look like me, right?
Yeah.
And so knowing that that's a thing, and obviously it is. If I'd had this discussion with you decades ago, I would say no, of course not. And yet again, I totally screwed up. I totally screwed this up. And so having that experience, I'm much more careful as I push and pull things, because color correction is a dangerous beast. It really is.
It's an imperfect science, right? And I know, I barely know what a LUT is, so I'm not the guy to be the expert on color correcting. But I do know, like we were saying, I do know it's subjective. And in your line of work, especially if you're doing predominantly corporate work, they want at least probably more accuracy, or let's say you have less creative freedom and liberty than you would if you were creating a Michael Bay film, right?
The other thing is that in a corporate environment, you're editing a video starring a person that quite possibly a lot of people in that company actually know who they are. Like,
Right.
whoa,
They've seen him. They have
that's
a
not
reference.
they've seen him in the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what he looks like. Well,
Yeah.
what the hell?
What's up with that editor? Who's that editor? Does that editor
Yeah.
work for Annie Leibovitz? Like, what's going on?
I'm going down. I'm going down. No, I think it's a super interesting. And there's one last thing, and I realize we're kind of wrapping up here, and I wanted to mention this
you're good.
earlier, but for decades now, especially in the broadcast television world, and lines have blurred now with cinema cameras and whatnot and such, but for a long time, there was a sort of a general understanding that, and maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I think I don't think I am. In the Sony world, their cameras tended to be a little bit plus green, maybe a little plus blue, but definitely you would always pull everything back. Now, in today's day and age, that would indeed be a LUT, a lookup table where you say, I know the color value is coming in at this, but I really want you to show it to me at this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all a lookup table is, right? Yeah, you were being facetious. You know what a LUT is.
Yeah, I was. I know what they are. I know what they are.
Don't do that crap with me. But
I use them all the time.
Right. But that was a common thing. It's like, oh, a little too green, a little too bluey green that direction.
Yeah. Was
that a technology thing? Was that a racial thing on behalf of Sony being a Japanese company?
Right. Right.
Did Japanese people just look better on Sony cameras? I don't know.
Interesting. You remember there was was it Sony or one of those larger camera companies was under fire a couple of years ago, I want to say, for their face detection technology that was less accurate on dark skin than it was on light skin.
Oh, that's right.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was just there wasn't as much contrast as they had experimented with or tested.
Or it's just bad code. I think that's it's just bad code. And what was the other thing? The other controversy was around AI and AI bias. Because you have artificial intelligence that's making decisions based on skin tone or not on skin tone, the discussion was around machine learning and Elon Musk and self-driving cars and that. Remember that? So I was talking about that. Yeah, and the car making decisions on who's who and how to react in a situation and whose life to save if it's It's deep, man. We're like, it's Skynet level deep at that point.
It's getting
and it's
there,
scary because it's real. It's scary. Like if you have here's a hypothetical, Crispin. Like, so you got a self-driving car, you got a Tesla, and it's that
white man and a black man run out in front of you. Which one do I? And there's only enough room for me to. But
you have an AI that's been programmed by someone who's racist. But you didn't know that they were racist, and you're driving that car, and it's got to make the decision on whose life is worth more. Like, should I veer left or should I veer right? Or, maybe it's ageist and old person versus young person.
He's lived a great life.
Or sexist,
let's run that guy over.
Woman versus man. Who gets run over, right? Or do you have multiple markers? Oh, it's a black woman versus a white man. Let's run over the black woman.
All you're doing is making me never want to leave the house again.
Just saying, it's technology. You cannot stop it. You cannot stop it. It's those. I think the point is those kinds of details and nuances are being figured out right now as we speak, and we won't know about them for decades. Maybe you and I won't care because we'll be on the front porch drooling. But in a couple of decades, these decisions that they're coding today are gonna govern what happens in the future, right?
In the summer of 1986, I was working at a TV station in the Bay Area, and we had a corporate client, Hewlett Packard, come in, and they rented 6 weeks of studio time. And all they wanted was, I want to say chalkboard, maybe it was a whiteboard. I can't remember if whiteboards were a thing in 1986. 3 cameras, a dude standing there with a lav, and we had a stack of 60-minute U-matic, 3/4-inch tapes.
Mm-hmm.
And for 8 hours a day, we'd stick a tape in, hit record, fade up on camera 1, cue the guy, and he would say, and I will remember this name till the day I die. He said, "Hello, my name is Vipin Kumar, and today we will talk about," and from that point on, I did not recognize any words that he said.
Oh, wow.
And he was talking about artificial intelligence in 1986.
Wow.
And I think I've done a little bit of looking into it, and I think he's like one of the foremost, AI people ever, or one of the first, or whatever. But we were talking about artificial intelligence in 1986, and this guy would talk, and like 5 minutes before the end of the tape running out, we'd show him 5 minutes, and he'd go and finish up something, and then we'd wrap him up, and he'd go, "We will be back with another video." Fade to black. Okay, put another tape in. I'm ready to go. And 8 hours a day for 6 weeks we did this. And this guy was just unloading his brain with everything he knew about artificial intelligence at the time.
It's scary, man. It is scary. Like, yeah, there's so much stuff that is changing right now. Like, even in software. I mean, you're as intimate as everybody I know with software and how things work and the limitations and all that all that good and bad stuff. But I did this interview mid last year with one of the chief artificial intelligence architects at Skyloom Software. And, we were talking, I think it was the latest release of Skyloom where they had introduced some AI feature, and we're talking about that feature. But at the end of the interview, I asked him where things are going. What does the future look like? Like far down the line, when you, when you let AI off the chain, what does it look like? And he said he envisions a world, and this is apparently being tested now, but where you could sit in front of your computer and say, like Chris Fenwick could say, yes, I need a beach with a blue sky, maybe 2 or 3 wispy clouds in the sky. There's a V formation of seagulls flying to the southeast. There's a beautiful woman laying on the beach. She's brunette. She has on a red bikini, and she has a fruity drink next to her. And there are 3 other people walking along the water line in the distance. Make it. And it'll just listen to you and create that scene for you. Then you could go in and manipulate it and say, well, yeah, the tide's out a little further, and it'll move the tide out, So what happens then?
There's a couple examples of that. Number one, have you ever seen the movie Wag the Dog?
I feel like I've seen that.
Dustin Hoffman.
I don't recall it, though. Is it like one of those government conspiracy?
It's really kind of. It's really more about how in the modern era we probably shouldn't trust the news.
You think?
The story is the president is about to be reelected. We're weeks away from the election, and a bit of bad news comes out, and they hire Dustin Hoffman to come in to manufacture a news event to distract the public away from this bad thing that happened, and we just have to distract people for a couple of weeks. And it's a fascinating movie, but there's a scene in that where they're doing kind of what you're saying. This woman, this young girl, played by Kirsten Dunst, by the way, is on a soundstage, and it's all blue. And Dustin Hoffman is in the control room. He goes, let's put a village behind her. Maybe something more shot up, like distracted. Oh, yeah, opening scene. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great movie. Great movie.
I'm gonna put this on the list.
Who's the guy in the beard again? I'm drawing a blank. Dustin Hoffman and that guy.
I gotta see. I can't see him. He had his face in.
Yeah. So anyway, they come up with this scheme to distract the news for a couple of weeks until the election. But the scene you're talking about, where it's like, well, they give her a bag of chips. Why do I have a bag of chips? They're going to replace it in post. And it's all fanciful. Put a cat in her arms. How about a calico? Maybe something with longer hair. And the guy's just going through a menu going click, click, click. Okay, that'll do. Boop, boop. And then all of a sudden it looks like she's holding a cat. The Lay's potato chips are gone. None of this is true. None of this is true. But
it's the future. You know what's scary? Have you heard of a piece of software called Descript or Descript?
No.
I'm going to ruin the rest of your day if you haven't. So Descript, you, Chris Fenwick, you need to go dive into this app. I think they have a free trial. Go play with it, and then you and I need to circle back and have a discussion about it. So this is what these guys they do. They could take this conversation that I'm recording right now, import it into Descript software. It will analyze and create a transcript from our video.
Okay, yes.
And a timeline with a waveform at the bottom. But at the top, it is like a Word document. You go in, if you hit play, you see each word highlighted as we speak. You can then go in and edit those words like you're editing a Word document, and it edits the video based on your word edits. So you
but it's not changing.
It's smart enough.
Not changing any words that I say, right?
Oh, wait a minute. So you can, it gets better. You can go in and say, like, I have this thing where, I know I say, all the time, or so you could train it that whenever you see those, just go ahead and remove all that. You're instantly smarter at that point, right? But it also has this feature in there called overdub, where you train it for a half an hour on your voice, and it can then generate your voice. So you could go in and say you did a corporate video, and the person misspoke the price like 15 times in there, and the price of the product should have been $5,000, and they kept saying $50,000. You could go in and just in the text change it to $5,000. Now that person is saying $5,000 correctly throughout the text, or you can feed it.
But what's it doing with my lips when my lips are doing multiple syllables, but my voice is now only doing one?
It's not changing your lips. So your lips are going to be wrong, but the audio will be right. And it will sound like you because it's generating Chris Fenwick sounds. So, yeah. But then, they did a webinar yesterday, and one of the questions I chimed in on that, interestingly didn't get answered was, what about this deep fake technology? So we've got deep fakes where you can make people look like other people, and now we can put words literally in people's mouths. Can't you put that chocolate in this peanut butter and destroy the world? Right? Can't we say,
could.
A politician could. And destroy a politician's life, and before people figure it out, the damage is done, right? That's scary. And we're only in 2020 right now as we record this. So, 2025, 2030, when this stuff is really mature and computers are quantum and things are ridiculous, what does it look like? You talk about fake news now. Yeah. At least we can call BS on fake news now. Imagine when you need to have technology forensics to look at footage and certify it.
I think one of the things that's going to be that people are going to slowly learn to appreciate more is the value of live.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying they can't descript or monkey with something live, and sure they'll be able to. But at least for the time being, it's going to be a lot harder. I've often thought, let's say I'm a politician, and there's a reporter standing in front of me who's hostile. Mm-hmm. Okay, and standing over that reporter's shoulder is the cameraman, who has the camera trained on my face. And the hostile reporter asks me something, trying to trick me into saying something I don't want to say. Right? Mm-hmm. I've often thought that you, I should say historically, I thought that you, as that politician, should just listen and smile when they ask you that question, and then say whatever you want to say. Now, they do that to a certain degree now, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me, did you have sexual relations with that woman? And then they ask the question, and then you say, I'm really looking forward to improving the economy in my next term. Mm-hmm. Just say whatever you want, because the cameraman doesn't see the reporter.
Yeah.
And you could just say, she never said that. That tape's been doctored. Well, now, unfortunately, there's going to be half a dozen other people standing around with their phones pointing to the whole thing where you can't fake that. But historically, there was probably a camera, maybe a couple. Just as long as the camera doesn't see that reporter's lips talking, you say whatever you want, and I'm just going to answer it however I want.
I think there's a $1 billion business opportunity for whatever corporation that decides to incorporate some bulletproof verification certification.
Deepfake diagnostics, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
So that you can get a badge on the bottom of the screen that says certified real or something, because it's going to get to the level where it's fake is indistinguishable from real.
But then people are going to want to know that company that certifies that, are they in a red state or a blue state?
Exactly. Or are they Russian, right?
A red county, blue county. I need to know. Is that from Berkeley or is that from West Sac?
Man, that's so crazy. It's so much stuff. But it's fun, right? I mean, that stuff is scary, but the whole world of all this stuff is changing. Like I'm really anxious to see what you think about Descript when you look at it from an editor's standpoint. Because I'm considering using it, because like This Week in Photo and the audio podcast, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I could look and sound brilliant. Plus, I'll have a generated transcript that I can use, and what's not to like?
What's the cost? Or what are you paying, like 35 cents a minute or something?
No, it's not. It's an annual fee. I'm going to look at the pricing page here. So here's pricing. So they got the free trial, and then the creator, which is 10 hours of transcription a month. So
that's enough for your podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. 4 podcasts at an hour each, you're not touching that. And then, but you go up to the pro level, that's when you get the overdub technology here. So that's when you get to train it and insert your voice and all that. But yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. And this one, 30 hours. I don't know when I'd ever need 30 hours of transcription, but when Frederick Van Johnson Industries gets bigger than Leo Laporte, that's when. Yeah, I think before it gets to that point, it would have pivoted into something completely different. So I don't think Leo is an inspiration 100%, but I don't think he's the North Star of where I want to go. He's already done that. Why do I want to go there, right? So
no kidding.
I want to build a house. I don't want to move into a house that somebody else built. So he's already the Podfather. So.
No. He's not the Podfather. The Podfather is Adam Curry.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I take
Adam
that back.
Curry
Yes.
literally invented podcasting with
he did.
Dave Weiner.
Sorry, Adam. Sorry.
Yeah,
you're right. You're right. You are the Podfather.
Don't rewrite history. That's not cool. I cannot.
You're right. I used to listen to Adam's podcast. Is he still doing that show?
Which one?
Remember that? God, he was doing a show.
He did a show for a long time called The Daily Source Code.
Daily Source Code. Yes. That's the one I was listening to. And then he did another one that was like really kind of, I don't know, right-wingy or some kind. It was kind of weird and polarizing and too political. I think I watched a couple of episodes of it, and it was just like, it doesn't agree with me, but it was just like too conspiratorial and all this stuff. And I was like, what? If I want to see that, I can turn on the news. But his source code was cool.
There's your edit point if you want to cut this out. Source code was cool. So
right, I'm pausing right now.
Please record it.
Okay, we're recording again.
You can decide if you don't want to use it, but I just wanted to give you the edit point there. So I'm actually a huge fan of the No Agenda show. That's the one. And I will defend it briefly. So the No Agenda show started in 2007, I believe. And it was a byproduct of him, and Adam and John C. Dvorak working together at a company called Mebio in San Francisco. And they used to go out to dinner and just sit and chat. And one day they said, we should record these conversations. And in the beginning, it was just them, musing on the world.
With no agenda.
With no agenda. Now, it has grown and evolved into something different than that origin. But the core thing of what the No Agenda podcast is that it is two guys with obvious tech backgrounds looking at the news and looking at the news as delivered by multiple news outlets and then deconstructing it and saying, oh, okay, well, this was said on this newscast, but let's look at who's advertising on that show. And this was said on this newscast, and let's look who's advertising there. And then you start seeing patterns, and you start seeing that certain networks lean one way or a little bit different. And I'm not talking about Fox and CNN leaning. I'm talking about like little things like John C. Dvorak in 2012, I think, had a website going where he was the lead up to the election, where he was saying, oh, well, NBC is obviously pro this candidate, and CBS it leans here, and ABC. But what they're really good at is taking apart the news, and also, and as Americans, we're not good at this, looking at news from around the world. And BBC. taking it all apart and seeing what's really going on. I will tell you, I have 100% given up on listening to the mainstream media news anymore. What I'd much rather do is to continue to pay those guys to read the news for me, listen to the news for me. I mean, these guys listen to hours of C-SPAN a week to get, I was talking about getting at it live, and they're getting the real deal, and then they break it down and they show you what's actually happening. And I got news for you. It's a lot different than what you hear listening to CNN or Fox or CBS. It's an astonishing look at the news.
I stopped listening. I think it was during the election cycle. When Trump got elected, it was like, because you remember how hot it got towards the end there. It was totally. Just like mudslinging and hate and this, and it was just. Yeah, it was too much. I stopped listening to all news, and I cut out all political podcasts, and I muted people that were grandstanding on Facebook. It was like,
you should just mute Facebook. Your life will be better. One of the things that they talk about is, and I got to agree, is that their mission is to take apart the news and explain it. Because of that, what has the news been for the last 4 years? It's been about, let's tear down Donald Trump. Let's expose Donald Trump. Let's talk about Donald Trump. Let's explain what a monkey ass hat Donald Trump is. Okay? That's what they talk about. They'll go through it. They'll explain it, and they'll show times when he's being misquoted, or I love this phrase: "You're being accurate, but not precise."
Ugh.
Yes, he said that, but he said a lot more too, Right. And they'll lay that stuff out. And the problem is if you do that, you're immediately labeled a Trump apologist. And all they're doing is looking at the news.
That's the problem, though, right? That's true. That's the problem, though, because I think life was much simpler when you and I were growing up, right? Because it was, you could trust the news. Whatever they told you is what happened. It wasn't.
Maybe. I think, in all honesty, though.
It probably wasn't, but we thought you could trust Ted Brokaw and all those people that were telling you the news, right? Or whatever. Mr. Brokaw. Yeah. We thought we could trust them. And it was like, the news is coming on. They said A, B, and C happened. Oh, crap. Okay, A, B, C happened. Now, I don't feel like we have, maybe No Agenda is it, but I don't feel like we have a trusted source. We have biased news on both sides. Podcasts, but it's just a whirl of bias, which means if there's so much bias out there, you can't trust anybody. So then that leads to stress because you don't know what the hell is going on in the world. So, and if you want to get ahead at anything, yeah, you can't spend all your time doing what Dvorak and Curry do, sifting through the tea leaves and trying to make sense of it. No one has time for that, right? So
I don't even have enough time to actually listen to. They produce 6 hours a week, 2-3 hour shows a week.
Jeez.
And now about 4 hours of that is actually reporting, or what they call media deconstruction. Quite a bit of it is them thanking their sponsors. And here's the thing, they don't have sponsors. They are funded solely on people sending them money. If you were to send them money and say, hey, I love the show, please tell my wife I think she's beautiful and I'm the luckiest guy on the planet. They'll say, okay, so this is coming in from Chris Fenwick, and he wants to say that he thinks his wife is beautiful and he's the luckiest guy on the planet. And Chris, thanks for the $100 to help support the show. They spend quite a bit of time in every episode thanking the listeners. And they've even gone one step further to call those listeners producers, because what does a producer do? Well, they pay for everything.
Yeah.
And so we're producers now. If you listen to the show, you're a producer. And they get a lot of input. They have listeners in every one of the 3-letter agencies in DC. They have people that work on nuclear subs that are listeners or producers. They have people in every branch of government, every branch of the military.
Are they audio only, or are they doing video?
Audio only. No. They don't want to do video. But mostly because Adam has a bit of Tourette's that it manifests itself in weird tics. And he hates seeing himself on camera, which is weird because we all know him from MTV. But
yeah, absolutely.
I gotta say, I get the complaints that people have. I do understand that, but I've listened to them extensively for the last 13 years, and I gotta say, it's the only source of news I even remotely trust.
Wow.
Say what you will about Chris.
What was that deal Joe Rogan signed with was it Spotify? Didn't he get like $500 million or something?
$bazillion, but he had to move to Texas to get it or something.
Yeah.
The check was in Texas. No, I think that's awesome.
I wonder why they didn't get that kind of funding, and would they have taken it? To move
because
that show
Rogan
to
is a
Spotify?
Powerhouse. Rogan is a
But
Rogan
they are too. 13 years. Come on.
No. They don't have the listeners. Rogan has a giant audience. Joe Rogan is the Johnny Carson of our era. Of this era.
Yeah.
Somebody goes on Rogan, everybody knows about it.
That's
Everybody's
true.
seen Elon smoke weed.
Yep.
He's a monster, and he has a very simple format. He just talks and asks questions. He actually listens, and he doesn't have to be interrupted by stupid commercial breaks for, more pills and pharmaceuticals to pay for everything. So he can let there's nothing more frustrating than watching a good discussion. As I say this, you're thinking, yeah, we got to get out of here. But watching a good conversation have to get cut off.
Hey, Chris, let me pause you right there. We got to take a commercial break real quick.
You'd be smart.
We'll be right back after these messages from Pfizer. It's so crazy.
Kidding.
I know. I love that model, though. I mean, we got we'll wrap this up. But this the whole podcasting model, even above YouTube, I think is really, really interesting to me. It's just the way the democratization of opinions. Whether you agree with them or not, the fact that the gate is open and they can be out there is just like the definition of free speech. So I love it. Well,
it's
cool,
awesome.
Chris Fenwick. If people want to catch up with you and follow you or hire you or otherwise harass you, where should they go?
Well, if you want to hire me, go to sliceeditorial.com. If you want to hear my ridiculous musings about our industry, it would be Chris Fenwick on Twitter. And if you just want to see my woodworking stuff and family stuff, that's purely just my personal life, that's on Instagram. I guess it's not that personal if I put it on Instagram, is it?
No, it's not.
And it's Chris Fenwick on Instagram. I'm Chris Fenwick on everything.
Awesome. Cool, man. Thank you for doing this. We got to do this again. Let's make this a regular occurrence. This could be
every 5 to 6 years, no matter what's happening.
No. 5 to 6 weeks or something. Yeah, this has to be our little personal, bite on no agenda. So we'll do
you don't have to use any of that stuff if you don't want to use it. I understand.
No, I'm using it all. Dude, the TWIP flow is a non-edited stream of consciousness. So, my audiences are me. They know what I know. So
all right, cool.
All right, man. Well, you have a good weekend and be safe. You're in Sacramento now, did you say?
Yeah, I'm living in Rancho Cordova.
I know exactly where that is.
Past you. Yep.
Uh-huh. Yep, I know exactly where you are. Well, be safe up there and enjoy that heat today.
Gonna hit 100. Going to be in the pool later.
It's a little toasty. All right, Chris Fenwick, you take care, man. Thanks a lot.
See you later, man.
This is Twip.